So the next concept that we are going to discuss is called cloud computing. As I told you, we discussed grid computing. The next concept in computing aspect is cloud computing. What do you mean by clouds? That's a very important definition that you need to understand. So let me tell you what exactly cloud is here. We have three S's to discuss on. First one is called as software plus server plus storage plus a software development platform. So if you see all this together, server plus storage plus software development or using a software, if all of this is happening over the internet, then such a thing only is called as cloud computing. What is it called as? Cloud computing. Check the definition. Cloud computing simply means the use of computing resources as a service through networks, use of services through networks. That is what we are trying to tell there. When over the network, that is on the internet, if you are able to use any services, like without installing a software, you want to use a software over the web. Remember back in second chapter discussed the cloud based applications. So like that. So taking all that into consideration, cloud computing simply means the use of computing resources as a service through networks, which are typically the internet. The internet is commonly visualized as clouds, and hence the term cloud computing, for computing that is done through the internet. With cloud computing, users can access the database via the internet from anywhere. So that's the best part about cloud computing. You can access cloud from anywhere. And in fact, you can even say anywhere and any time. So when you say anywhere and any time, it makes it a 24/7 aspect. You can use it 24/7, 365 days. So cloud computing, the internet is usually visualized as clouds, and hence the term cloud computing. It can be used from anywhere at any time for as long as they need, without worrying about maintenance or management of the actual resources. The best thing about cloud computing is we don't use the resources. First of all, we don't own them. A third party who runs the cloud, he owns them. So they will take care of all the maintenance and management. All you need to do is to just work around and use the cloud. That's all. So check that part out. So here with cloud computing, without worrying about any maintenance or management of actual resources. Besides these databases in the cloud may be highly dynamic and scalable. The what? Highly dynamic and scalable. Scalable means you can increase or decrease as per your need. Increase or decrease as per your need or usage. Scalable. You want to increase the size of cloud, you can do that. No sir, that much cloud is not required. Now you can reduce that. You can as well do that also. So yes, cloud is highly dynamic. It changes. There is no way how you restrict the usage of cloud. So it's dynamic, it's scalable, and only for how long I use, I pay only for that. It's called pay per use basis. So which is also one of the important feature of cloud we will be seeing. So taking all that into consideration, cloud computing is both a combination of software and hardware based computing resources, which is delivered as a networked service. This model of IT enabled services enables anytime access to a shared pool of applications and resources. Let us look at some of the characteristics of cloud computing. It is an important question. This has been asked in the exam in the past. They can always ask you characteristics of cloud computing. Let's start with the first one. You can, as I told you, elasticity and scalability. It's elastic, that is elasticity and scalability. When you want to increase the size of the cloud, you can increase. When you want to decrease the size of the cloud, you can decrease. And wherever you want to use and whenever you want, it's flexible, elastic. Cloud computing gives the ability to expand and reduce. That is what is scalability. What is it? Expand and reduce. Expand and reduce, which is called scalability. Then the second characteristic is the most easy one, pay per use, which is called as metered service. Like a taxi, how far you travel, you pay for that much. Taxi, auto rickshaw, how much you pay for will be the distance you travel. Pay per use basis. Cloud also, for how long you use, pay for that long. As simple as that. Pay per use basis. We pay for cloud services. We pay for cloud services only when we use them. Only when we use them. Either for a short term or for a longer duration. That's up to you. And the best thing about cloud services, they're available 24/7. Available 24/7. That is what anytime usage is called on demand. Whenever you want, they are available on demand. What do you mean by on demand? Because we invoke cloud services, only when we need them, they are not permanent parts of the IT structure. So whenever you want, you can get it from a third party vendor or procure it from a third party vendor. Because we invoke cloud services only when we need them, they are not permanent parts of the IT infrastructure. This is a significant advantage. This is a significant advantage for cloud use as opposed to internal IT services. With cloud services, there is no need to have dedicated resources. So we don't have to buy and use any of the resources. We can rely on the cloud usage. That's what we mean to say. Because we invoke cloud services only when we need them, they are not permanent parts of the IT infrastructure. And this is a significant advantage. This is what? A significant advantage for cloud use as opposed to the internal IT services. With cloud services, there is no need to have dedicated resources waiting to be used. There is no need to have dedicated resources waiting to be used as in case of internal services. Because if you have internal services, you have to use that only. But with respect to cloud, it is definitely not like that. Then one of the most important features is resiliency and workload movement. Two features I'll tell you. But before I discuss those two features, there is a simple point called multi-tenancy. So can multiple people use the cloud at the same time? Undoubtedly they can use. So therefore, public cloud services often can host the cloud services for multiple users. For how many? For multiple users within the same infrastructure. Server and storage isolation may be physical or virtual, depending upon the specific user requirements. So multiple people can access the cloud at any time. That is what we are trying to say when it comes to multi-tenancy. Now let me talk about two factors here. They are closely connected. That is why we are discussing them together. Resiliency and workload movement. Now what about these two? Workload movement, when you say, let's say for example, a few people are using the cloud and then more users added to the cloud, then multiple people, when they access the cloud at the same time, automatically speed will deteriorate. And now we don't want that entire speed to deteriorate and all this drama to happen. So what is the next best thing that we will do? The next best thing that we will do is to move the work from one server to the other or one space to the other. So check that part that we are talking about is workload movement. Then we will come back to resiliency. The characteristic is related to resiliency and cost considerations. Here, cloud computing providers, whoever are doing that work, cloud computing providers can migrate workloads across servers both inside the data center and across the data center. Both inside the data center and across the data centers, even in a different geographic area. So that's what is called as workload movement. Now what is resiliency? Now let's say all of us have stored data on Google Drive. In which server in Google our data is stored, you and I don't know. Point number one, we need not know. Even if we know, we can do nothing about it. And let's say that server got spoiled and now I am accessing my Google Drive. What will Google tell you? Will they send you a message saying, today the server in which your data is stored is not working, so we will not be able to serve you? And the person sitting next to me has opened Google Drive and he is able to work on it. How is this a gross injustice? That is why when one server like that or any crash happens on any of the servers which are on the cloud, without the user getting to know, they will migrate all the data from that server to another server, so that whenever we access, 24/7 access is available to us. What problem occurred on the other side, we are least bothered about it, or we don't really care about it. What is such a thing called as resiliency? Check that out. What is resiliency? Resiliency of a cloud offering can completely isolate the resiliency feature of a cloud can completely isolate the failure of the server and storage resources from cloud users. Work is migrated to a different physical resource. Work is what? Migrated from a different physical resource in the cloud, with or without the awareness of the user. Doesn't actually, without the awareness of the user only it will be moved. But if you are working in the cloud space, you will know that from this cloud you are moving the data to the other cloud. But if it's public clouds like what we are using in terms of Google Cloud and all that, we don't even get to know that Google changed something or not. That is what is called resiliency. The ability to recover from any crashes, or the ability to change or move data from one system to the other without disturbing the user. Now that's the best thing about cloud. So these are all the characteristics of the cloud. Now we got to talk about a few advantages. The next topic that can again pretty much come up in the exam. What are the advantages of cloud computing? It's a very simple concept. Let us look at a few advantages. Most of the characteristics turn out to be advantages, like you can get it on demand, multiple people can use it at the same time. It's only on metered services. I don't think there is much of an explanation in that, and you don't have to set up the entire cost. The cloud provider will do that. So it's a very easy part. Let's check that out. Advantage of cloud computing is to achieve economies of scale. Best thing, volume, output or productivity can be increased even with few systems, and thereby they reduce the cost. And not only that, the best part of this and the second advantage is you don't have to spend all your money on the technology infrastructure. So thereby data and information can be accessed. With minimal upfront spending. With only what? With minimal upfront spending, in a pay-as-you-go approach. Which is based on demand. And then you can sit in any part of the world and work on this. Global workforce. People worldwide can access the cloud with internet connection. That's the best part. So what are the three advantages that we saw till now? You can achieve economies of scale. You can reduce the spending on all the infrastructure because you're procuring it from a third party. Globalize the workforce. They can work from different parts of the world. Globalize the workforce. Streamline business process. Getting more work done in less time with less resources are possible. Getting more work done in less time with less resources are possible. Reduce capital cost. Now that you are looking at others to do this for you, it will help you reduce the capital cost. Not required to spend huge money on hardware and software and licensing fees. Pervasive, wherever you are, anytime, anywhere accessibility. Pervasive accessibility means data and applications can be accessed anytime, anywhere, using any smart computing devices, making our life so much easier. And monitor projects more effectively. It is feasible to confine within budgetary allocations, and can be ahead of the completion cycle time, and you can be ahead of the completion cycle time. And less personal training is needed. You don't have to be a computer expert to handle what is there in cloud. It's a very simple task. So you don't have to be any expert. It's very easy. Less training is needed. And minimize the maintenance and licensing of softwares, as there is not too much of non-premise computing resources. When all these resources are comfortably available on the cloud, why will you have to buy and maintain all this on your head? So you don't again have to do that. As there is no too much of non-premise computing resources, maintenance becomes simple, and updates and renewals of software systems rely on cloud vendor or provider. And improved flexibility, what about that? It is possible to make fast changes in our work environment without putting serious issues at stake. But also, having said that, so many advantages. Don't you think all the data is maintained on a public cloud? Data exposure is too high, right? What about your data security? And not only that, whatever cloud service provider tells you, you have to listen to that. You don't have a special say on what you want. And if you are running on two clouds, I told you this feature called interoperability, that could turn out to be a problem as well. Come on, let's check some of the drawbacks in cloud computing. If internet connection is lost, fundamentally you see this entire thing runs on internet, and if internet connection is lost, no clouds. So biggest drawback. If internet connection is lost, the link to cloud and thereby to data and application is lost. Security is a major concern. As the entire working with data and applications depend on the other cloud vendors and providers. Again, scalability is definitely a feature, but when you want, if it's not available, although the third drawback you see, although cloud computing supports scalability, that is quickly scaling up and down, it does not permit the control of resources. Cloud service provider can scale up, not you. Okay, if you are maintaining the cloud and suddenly want to increase the cloud overnight, it's going to not going to happen. So scalability, yes, no doubt it's a feature, but it working comfortably, we don't have a control on that. Although cloud computing supports scalability, it does not permit the control of these resources. And for somebody who doesn't own it, if you only own the cloud, not a problem. Depending on the cloud vendor, customers sometimes may have to face restrictions. You can't use this cloud now. It may not be available in this time. So things are there. Depending on the cloud vendor or provider, customers may have to face restrictions on the availability of the applications, operating system and infrastructure options as well. Then, as I told you, the last point in drawback, you know them, interoperability. So two clouds may not support the same content. So cloud computing structures may be different, cloud computing environments may be different. So interoperability, what about that? What is interoperability? Underline, ability of two or more applications that are required to support a business need, to work together by sharing data and other business related resources is an issue. Okay, supporting each other and sharing data is called interoperability, but sometimes that turns out to be an issue where applications may not reside in a single cloud. That is where applications are there in two clouds, and two vendors may have applications that do not cooperate with each other. What can work here may not sometimes work there. That problem is called as interoperability. Interoperability is an issue in clouds, but if you ask me what is interoperability, it is given in the bracket, you can see there. Simply, interoperability is the ability of two or more applications, that are required to support a business need. Understood? Two or more applications required to support a business need. So we have some advantages, not to say we also have a few drawbacks. You want to concentrate on both these. All these three are potential questions. What is the working of a cloud and what does the cloud do? So introduction. Then one more frequently asked questions is nothing but the cloud computing environment, which talks about the four types of clouds. What are the four types of clouds that you see here? Public cloud, private cloud, a community cloud, and a hybrid cloud. Let us talk about public, private, hybrid and a community cloud, as to what exactly this cloud is and how is the offering provided. Look at the first one, private cloud. If it is restricted within an organization, only, then it is obviously called a private cloud. Private cloud resides within the boundaries of an organization, underline. If private cloud, and it's very, very secure because no third parties are allowed on it. So private cloud It refers to something where within the boundaries of an organization and is used exclusively only for organization's benefits. These are also called as internal clouds. They're also called what? They're also called as internal clouds or corporate clouds. Private clouds can either be private to the organization. Now again, listen to this point carefully. Private cloud is private to the organization. Necessarily need not be that the organization only runs it. The access is allowed only to you, not to the whole world. That is why it's a private cloud. Can I outsource the entire maintenance work to a third party? Yes. So the third party will maintain the servers, third party will give access to the cloud, he'll take care of the maintenance, everything. Simple guys, instead of maintaining it in your office, you are getting a third party to do this for you. That is only called as third party outsourcing of a cloud. It's called an outsourced cloud. If you only maintain the entire thing, it's called on-premise cloud. So the private clouds are of two types. It could either be on-premise or it could be third party. But you know what you need to understand? Whether it's on-premise or third party, the access is only to you, which is why it's called a private cloud. Either the organization can maintain it or it can be managed by a vendor. So if it's maintained by organization, it's called on-premise cloud. If it's managed by a third party, it's called the outsourced cloud. Both on-premise cloud and outsourced cloud are private clouds only. Look at the good things about private clouds. Certain characteristics of private cloud are, one, it is very secure. It's very secure. Two, it has central control. You know what secure means, right? It's within the organization, so no outsiders get access, so it's highly secure. The private cloud is secure as it is deployed and managed by the organization itself. Central control, as usual. The private cloud is managed by, as usual, the private cloud is managed by the organization itself. There is no need for organization to rely on anybody. But only thing is, since the cloud is used by our own employees, we don't make them sign contracts on how to use the cloud. So a service level agreement between how I will render service to you and how the user is supposed to be responsible, which is called a SLA. SLA stands for Service Level Agreement. It stands for what? Service Level Agreement. And that service level agreement is not very stringent when it comes to private. We are like our own employees only. No, what will we make them sign? But you sign for a Google Cloud Services as a public cloud. You know what they'll do? First they'll make you sign a very, very strict service level agreement, because tomorrow you should not blame them. Google didn't provide me this service and that service. So in case of public clouds, which we are going to see now, strong service level agreements are there. But when it comes to private, you have weak SLAs in private and stringent or strict stringent SLA in public. In public clouds, it's very strict. In private clouds, since they are our own employees, formal writing and signing and all are not there. In private clouds, either formal SLAs do not exist or they are weak because it's between the organization and the user of the same organization. Thus, high availability and good service may not always be available. Then the advantage of private cloud. What about the advantage of private cloud? It improves average server utilization, allows usage of low cost servers and hardware while providing higher efficiencies, and thus reducing the cost. Greater number of servers would entail. Instead of putting great number of servers, then reduce the cost and get them to use it within your organization. 2. It provides high level of security and privacy to the user. No doubt about that. It provides a high level of security and privacy to the user. It is small in size and can be controlled by the organization itself. So amazing. Private cloud, highly secure within the organization, maintenance easy and all that. But only thing is, you have a drawback. What is that? One limitation is that the IT teams may have to invest. You are maintaining the entire cloud, so don't you think you have to invest? Yeah, that's a drawback here. One major limitation is that the IT teams in the organization have to invest in buying, building and managing the clouds independently. So budget is a constraint in private clouds, and they also have loose service level agreements. The entire opposite of the story is a public cloud. It's open to whole world. Internet is the best example of a public cloud. Anybody and everybody can get onto it and use it. Like what a public cloud is. Public cloud is a cloud infrastructure that is open to use for general public. It may be owned, managed and operated by business, academic or government organizations. It may be owned, managed and operated by business, academic or government organizations, or a combination of them. Typically, public clouds are administered by third parties. Typically, public clouds are administered by third parties or vendors over the internet. Typically, what? Public clouds are administered by third parties or vendors over the internet, and the services are offered on pay-per-use basis. Services are offered on pay-per-use basis. And these are also called as provider clouds. These are also called as what? Provider clouds. They're highly scalable, very affordable. Highly scalable, you know what scalability is, right? That's why no much explanation. Public clouds are highly scalable, affordable, but the point of them is they're less secure. They're not like restricted to your organization, so it can be less secure. And they are highly available. So whenever you want, they are available at the time. They're highly available. And stringent service level agreements can also be maintained in public clouds. As the service provider's business reputation and customer strength are totally dependent on cloud services. They follow strict service level agreements for that any complications to be avoided. What's the best thing? What are the advantages? It's widely used in the development, deployment and management of enterprise applications at affordable costs. It allows organizations to deliver highly scalable and reliable applications. What is it? Allows organizations to deliver highly scalable and reliable applications rapidly at more affordable cost. There is no need for establishing an infrastructure for setting up and maintaining the cloud. You don't have to do anything because you're just buying it from third party, a public cloud. And strict service level agreements are to be followed. There is no limit for the number of users. As many number of users can be using it. And moreover, but you can see one limitation down there. What is the one limitation that you see constantly is cloud computing is a situation whereby you can talk about what exactly. One limitation is security, the big thing. Public cloud computing environment is public, so security is a big threat. One limitation is security assurance, and thereby building trust among the clients is far from desired, but slowly it's liable to happen. But okay, you can try and make sure. Further, privacy is also not possible. You're maintaining a public cloud. If an organization is maintaining data on public cloud, now that is obviously with a third party, so quite a dangerous aspect. Not only that, talk about a hybrid cloud. What's a hybrid cloud? A combination of public and private is called a hybrid cloud. Minimum of one public cloud and minimum of one private cloud should be there. Then it is called a hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is a combination of both, at least one private cloud and one public cloud computing environments, usually consisting of infrastructure, platforms and applications. The usual method of using the hybrid cloud is to have first a private cloud initially, have a private cloud that is very much within your organization, and then maybe open a portion of that to public, so which will be part of public cloud. You have some portion which is private cloud, some portion is now open to public, so it's called a hybrid cloud where you have both private and public cloud features. So the usual method of using the hybrid cloud is to have private cloud initially, and then for additional resources the public cloud is used. The hybrid cloud can be regarded as a private cloud extended to the public cloud and aims at utilizing the power of public cloud by retaining the properties of a private cloud. So it's amazing, no? It has both the features here of a private cloud and also it works like a public cloud as well. That's why it's called hybrid cloud. It is useful in two ways. It's offered in two ways. A vendor either has a private cloud and then partners with a public cloud, or a public cloud forms a partnership with a private cloud. But both the things coexist. That's why it's called hybrid cloud. It's scalable, but then it's only partially secure because the private cloud portion of a hybrid cloud is secure. What about the public cloud portion? Public clouds are always dangerous. So that's why we are using the word partially secure. They are partially secure. Strict service level agreements are there. Little cloud is public cloud, little cloud is private cloud. The management of these two, it's a little complex cloud management. So a little bit of that could prove to be a problem. The advantages of hybrid cloud include two things. It's highly scalable and gives the power of both private and public clouds. It provides better security when compared to the public cloud. But only one limitation is the security features are not as good as private cloud. I want you to make a correction there. The limitation of hybrid cloud is that the security features are not as good as private cloud and complex to manage. It's private cloud, it's complex to manage. If it's already rectified, fine, but otherwise just make a change. The limitation of hybrid cloud is the security features are not as good as private cloud. Last one is called a community cloud. What do you mean by a community cloud? It's a cloud restricted to a group, small group of people, maybe bunch of doctors coming together to form a community cloud, only for a set of people who are in the same profession. The community cloud is a cloud infrastructure that is provisioned exclusively for a specific community, only for a specific set of people, a specific bunch of people, specific community. That is provision for use of specific community who have shared concerns. It may be owned, managed and operated by one or more organizations in the community, or it could be a third party or some combination of them, and it may exist on or off the premises. It necessarily need not be with only one of them. It can be with one of them where others can use as part of community, or it can be with two or more people, or it can totally be held by a third party outside and all of these people can share it. But it's not like a public cloud open to the whole world, not like a private cloud restricted to an organization. It's few people who are having common interest. They are all coming together as a community and forming that. This model is suitable for organizations that cannot afford to have a private cloud and who either can't rely on a public cloud. Sir, we'll go for a public cloud. No, that's not very safe. Sir, we'll set up our own private cloud. No, that's too costly. So when you want to strike a balance and put for these, that's when you get a community cloud in place. The good things about community cloud, that they're collaborative and distributive maintenance. They're partially secure again, and they're very cost effective from the point of view of the organization. So look at some of the good things about that. What are the good things? It allows establishing a low cost private cloud. Because it's still private between the bunch of people. It allows collaborative work on the cloud. Very good. And also organizations can share responsibilities, and definitely it has better security than a public cloud. But if you look at one of the biggest drawbacks that you will see of the community clouds are, if one of the members in the community turn out to be evil, they can have access to everybody's data. Of course you can put restrictions, but then the limitation of community cloud is that the autonomy of the organization is lost. And some of the security features are not as good as the private cloud. It is not suitable in cases where there is no collaboration. So if it's collaborative, it's amazing. But where there is no collaboration, then that could turn out to be a problem. And so that is what we have till here in clouds. We talk about what is cloud computing, what are their characteristics, and what is the cloud computing environment, how different types of clouds are there, their advantages and drawbacks. Let's move to the last concept in cloud computing, which are called as cloud computing models. It's called as what? Cloud computing models. Cloud computing is a model that enables the end users. Cloud computing is a model that enables end users to access the shared pool of resources. Access what? Shared pool of resources, such as computer, network, storage, database and application as an on-demand service. What is it? As a on-demand service. So once again, what is that point they're talking about? Cloud computing is a model that enables you to use shared pool of resources, where at different areas, wherever you are, and at wherever your enterprise is, or whatever location you are physically there, doesn't really matter, because you can use computer, network, storage, database and applications, the feature on demand, that too without need to buy on your own. These services are provided and managed by the service provider, and therefore the burden on you don't have to sit and maintain all this. They're provided by service provider, reducing the management effort from the end user side. The essential characteristics of the cloud include on-demand, self-service, broad network access, resource pooling, rapid elasticity and measured services or metered services, which is nothing but pay-per-use basis. I hope you got this. The National Institute of Standards and Technology defines 3 basic service models. How many? 3 basic service models. First one is called infrastructure as a service. What is the first one called? Infrastructure as a service. Then we have platform as a service and software as a service. Let us first start with infrastructure as a service. Now in the name only it is there, infrastructure. Generally when we lack physical infrastructure, then what we sought is you have to either buy it. Now once you believe that you can't buy it, then you can hire it. Where should you hire it from? You can hire it from the cloud vendors. What is the first sort of service provided? Infrastructure as a service. Whatever hardware you lack, it is a hardware level service obviously. Infrastructure as a service, a hardware level service. Hardware level service provides computing resources such as processing power, memory storage and networks for cloud users to run their applications on demand. This allows users to maximize the utilization of the cloud without having to manage on their own the resources. So one, you don't have to procure. Two, after you procure also, entire management headache will be on us. Now if I buy a car, or if I'm going in Ola or Uber, if I buy a car, its parking, its maintenance, taking care of its service, petrol, diesel, everything is on my head. Rather if I book an Ola, pay for it from where to where I go. It's just exactly how cloud computing works. Meter services, from when you want to use to how long you want to use, just check it out and get the job done. That's it. So you don't have the headache of maintaining it, taking it to service, maintenance of all those, making sure that's available all the time. All the drama is not there. It's all with the third party cloud service provider. But only thing is you need to pay for this. And here again, pay for this means you're not again paying some huge amount. You're paying as per your usage only. What are the characteristics? You don't have physical access, but you have web access to the resources. 2. Centralized management. All of this is maintained in a central location, centralized management. Sir, I want more services. Okay. Sir, I want less services. Right now I'm operating at high capacity. You know what elasticity and scalability means? Elastic and dynamic scaling is available. Shared infrastructure. This is not only for use, available for multiple number of people. Shared infrastructure. And the best part about this is what? Metered services. That means you pay only for the extent of what you use. And going by that, cloud service models, if you're talking only about what are the various cloud service models, we have 3. Under the first one, we have some categories. What are the first one here? The first of the cloud service models, let's talk about that. Cloud service models. Cloud service models, under which the first one is called as infrastructure as a service. So under infrastructure as a service, you have a few of those. What are those? First one is called network as a service. Network as a service. Storage as a service. network as a service, storage as a service. If you don't have storage space, you can obviously go on the web and store. Okay, don't worry, we will deal all this in detail. Network as a service, storage as a service, database as a service, backend as a service. Now we are playing so many games on Android, so many apps are being launched on Android. For all those apps, who is providing the backend support? Do you think what app developer himself will sit and do the backend also? Or some third party will maintain it for him who is a cloud service provider. And when you don't have a physical desktop to carry, you can set up this desktop for yourself online, and whenever you go, wherever you go, if you just have access to internet on any device, you will be able to access your desktop or a desktop looking environment on the web, which are the 5 services. The lack of these 5 physically is compensated by the cloud, all of them logically available on the web. Very simple concept. Let us check that now. First one, network as a service is an ability given to the end users to access virtual network services. Mobile hotspot is a good example of virtual network. And this one, virtual private networks. So you are running on internet and you want to just connect to a private network, like say employees working in some organizations, like say one of my friends is working in an organization like KPMG or Deloitte. Now all these organizations, what they do, they have restricted, they have access to their resources only for their employees, and they can't operate content on public networks. So what they do is, these employees can now, everybody is working from home, they can work from home, but when they work from home, they are on a public network. But to make sure that this public network, what these people are on, is used to connect to a private network, which is really not a private network, it's a virtual private network provided across the cloud. So some service providers are there who help us to get onto a public network which is masked to make it look like a private network, which is called network virtualization. So we did talk about network virtualization, where splitting bandwidth or available bandwidth is allocated to more than one system. So all that is again possible through infrastructure as service. So the first point here, it's an ability given to the end users to access virtual network services that are provided by service provider over the internet on a pay per use basis. Network as service providers operate in 3 common models. What are the 3 common models? A VPN model, that is a virtual private network. 2, bandwidth on demand, and then also mobile network, mobile virtual network, which is nothing but something services like a hotspot. Okay, then that's the point 1. 2, storage as service, you can have cloud service. That's the point where you have Google Drives, or you have anything where you can store things. Storage as service, for instance, a service provided as a subscription basis. You have Vimeo, okay, you have Google Drive, you have Dropbox, you have places where you can store content. To an extent it is free, like say 15 GB is free on Google Drive. You want more space, you can obviously pay for it and buy. Amazon offers a lot of space nowadays. So cloud space is offered by so many of these people. So yeah, it's a provide storage infrastructure on a subscription basis to users who want low cost and convenient way to store data, synchronize data across multiple devices, manage off-site backup, mitigate the risk of disaster recovery, and preserve records for a long term. So if you don't have enough storage space on your devices, you can go for cloud storage. Then database as a service, it's a task for somebody to sit and maintain a database, and to access the database we need a DBMS. Remember we saw all that database and DBMS structures in that. So we need all that, and instead of having all that, why don't you hire a third party vendor who provides you all that as a service? He'll provide you a database as a service, just store your data in that in an organized manner, and whenever you want, just access it. It's a very, very simple thing to deal with. Database as a service is also related to infrastructure as a service and provides users with the seamless, the word seamless means without any breaks. Okay, so database as a service provides users with seamless mechanisms to create, store and access database, as a host site on demand. It's an ability given to the end users. to access the database service without the need to install and maintain it on a pay-per-use basis. So how much ever you are using the database, you can use that much and leave it up. Then like I said, back-end service, as I told you, back-end. What is back-end service? Now so many app developers are there who will develop the app. But then after that, so many people, if they start using that app, where will you store their user ID password? Where will you store information about the users? So these people who develop the app, do they need some support from the backend? Yes. And since you can't maintain it on your own, you can always take the help of a backend. Backend as a service. It's a type of infrastructure service. It's a type of infrastructure service that provides web and mobile app developers a way to connect their applications, to back-end cloud storage with added services such as user management, push notifications, social network services, integration of custom software development kits, and application programming interfaces. So, and lastly, like I told you, you can't carry your physical desktop everywhere and roam around. So that's why you can go set up your own desktop on the web, which is called as an online or a virtual desktop, which is again, let's say I left my desktop at home, but I can't carry it anywhere. No, rather, what I did, I created a desktop for myself on the cloud platform. In whichever country I am, in whichever place I am, all I need is a device, and through that device with internet, if I log on to that cloud service provider, it is as good as sitting on my desktop and working. It's called desktop as a service. Desktop as a service is an instance of infrastructure that provides ability to the end users to use desktop virtualization without buying and managing their own infrastructure. Instead of taking a headache of managing and using all this, you can safely run through with this particular thing. But all these five are necessarily where the hardware is not available to you. That's when you are going about using all this cloud service model. So all this five. Then the next part that we are going to look at is the second part of cloud service model. These are called as platform as a service. Now, but this is pretty much restricted to only one group of people. Who are those people who need platforms? The ones who need platforms generally are coders or programmers. They are what? Coders or programmers. Like somebody codes on a Java platform, somebody is coding on a .NET platform, like that, they need a platform. So this platform as service is commonly not used by all of us as end users. They're generally used if the end users are in the nature of programmers. So just check that part out. Platform as service is the ability to develop and deploy. Deploy means put into use. Develop and deploy an application on the development platform provided by a service provider. In traditional app development, the application will be developed locally. Traditional app development means, let's say if I'm an app developer and I'm developing a app in my system. That's what normally everybody does, right? They develop the app in their system. So in traditional app development, they develop the app in their system and the application will be developed in the host system, and then it will be made to put up on the web so that everybody can access that application. In standalone application development, the application will be developed by traditional development platforms which result in licensing based software. This is the normal story of somebody who is sitting and developing the software on a traditional basis. But right now in this model, platform as service, development of the software is completely moved from your device to the web. Let's say for example, I started developing a program on the web. Then I am sitting and coding and I saved it and I left that place. I went to another place, another country, let it be anywhere. I can open the same cloud service provider and continue my coding. Even I don't have to carry my laptop and roam around. Even if I find a device in that place, I can use that also. It's just like providing me a platform to code. Instead of doing that operation locally, we are doing it online. As simple as that. So, yeah, platform as a service now changes the entire structure. Look at what is happening here. Whereas in platform as service changes the app development from local machine to online. So right now, where are you writing the code? You're writing the code online. So somebody who generally you have to install that platform in your computer and code on that platform. But in platform as service, that platform is provided on the web. You can simply go on the web and start coding. Who are some people? Google App Engine, Windows Azure, all these are some cloud providers who are able to provide you this service. Typically, Platform as service providers, typically, platform as service providers may provide programming languages, application frameworks, databases, and testing tools apart from some build tools, deployment tools, and software load balancers as a service. Then the last service under the cloud service model are software as a service. Many of you must have used software as a service, like say I want to convert a Word document into a PDF, or I want to convert a PDF into Excel form, a PDF into image. Now let's say for example I don't have the right software installed in my computer. Back in the second chapter we discussed the point where on installed applications and web applications, right? Or I can give you one more example. You want to cut down a song. So you chose 4 or 5 songs. You want to cut portion of those songs and make a medley. And let's say you don't have a cutter joiner software installed in your system. Sir, then what should I do? Easy. Go online. You will find so many softwares online which will help you to do this activity what I told you now online safely and comfortably. So taking that into consideration, that's how software as a service works. Without needing to install it in your system, you can use the applicability of the software on the web. That is the best part of the story. Software as a service provides an ability to the end users. Software as a service provides an ability to the end users to access the application over the internet, that is hosted and managed by the service provider. Thus, the end users are exempted from, underline, managing or controlling and controlling. So what are we talking about? The end users are exempted from managing or controlling an application, development platform and the underlying infrastructure. So instead of loading the software and making it work, software as a service changes the way the software is delivered to the customers. In traditional development, what will you do? You will install the software and make it work in your system. But in cloud computing environment, you don't have to actually do that. Check that. In traditional software model, the software is delivered as a license-based product and the user needs to install it in a system. Since software as a service is delivered as an on-demand service, over the internet, there is no need to install, underline, no need to install the software to the end user's devices. Software as a service can be accessed discretionary at any time based on the end user needs. Now right now I want to open up a software for converter. I want MP3 converter into some other format. I can go online, I can type MP3 to WAV converter and I can go online, upload my MP3 song will get converted into the other format online and then I will just download the file and play it. So all this can happen online and that is exactly, it's called software being provided to you as a service, software as a service. And different types of software as a service are there. Like I said, it can help you to test a particular software. You don't want to install it in your system and go wrong. So probably you can do the testing online, testing as a service. Provides user with software testing capabilities, like you want to generate test data and work on it. Now like say you have to install a software in your system, give test data and then compare the answers, and then if you don't get the desired answers, it's all waste of your time and effort. No, that is why you can do one thing, you can test the entire thing online, test it online. That is called testing as a service. Give the inputs, get the results and check the answers. Then second one, API stands for Application Program Interface. API as a service. This allows users to explore functionality. Of web services such as Google Maps, payroll processing and credit card processing. And lastly, email, which is one of the best software that you can credit. Otherwise, we imagine still people sending letters and all that. Not even practically possible to imagine right now. So, email is the best software as a service that is available right now. Provides an integrated system of emailing, office automation, records integration, and also a facility to archive and keep. Archive means it is important but not useful today only. So you will store it in a particular place called archive, where it's archived and kept, and whenever you need, you can pull back. Spam blocking, malware blocking, or protection from viruses and worms, and compliance features. All these are provided on email. Then we're talking about the residual category, where you're saying other services. So under software we have three things: testing as a service, application program interface, the API as a service, and then email as a service. And then the fourth one is others or miscellaneous category. What are there under miscellaneous or other categories? Other cloud service models. One, communication as a service. Communication as a service has evolved in the same line as software as a service. Communication as a service, WhatsApp video calling, Skype, okay, Zoom meetings, all these are examples of communication as a service. You have not installed any setup, you have not done anything. All you did is download their application. On the other side, the other party also downloaded that application. Simply you guys started using it, and you made the benefit of using such a application. So that is what is called communication as a service. Communication as a service has evolved in the same line of software as a service. So you can either buy it or lease it from a single vendor. Communication as a service is responsible for all hardware and software management. Let's say you're getting onto a Zoom meeting. All you need is a Zoom application, that's all. You don't have to have any hardware, software, you didn't buy those servers, you didn't set up anything, you didn't do for network connection, nothing. It's an app that facilitates all of that. All you need to do is just go onto the web, download that software, start using the Zoom application or Skype application. So they're all what? Communication as a service. And it allows business to selectively deploy communication devices on pay as you go basis. This approach eliminates what? Large capital investments. This approach eliminates large capital investments like VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, Skype, Zoom, all these are Voice over Internet Protocol. Instant messaging, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Viber, all these are instant messaging apps. Collaboration and video conferencing applications using fixed and mobile devices. Then lot of people are in the need of data nowadays. See, there is so much of free data available on the web, but we don't know, free data is authentic or not. So right now, let's say think of somebody like Forbes. Forbes is going to release a study, and tomorrow somebody is going questioning Forbes that what nonsense did you release? This data is wrong. It will be such an embarrassment for a company like an entity like Forbes saying that they release wrong data. So these people can't rely, like how if a project is given to me, like in a college, some project has been given to me saying that pull out a project on how many people of the age group of 25 to 40 are employed in which sector in India. So first we will figure out what is the population of 25 to 40 age group in India, in that who's working where and what is the sector. Then you will take a sample data and do that, and for this you can completely go on Google. But again, we are not sure whether the data that we pick up and do something is authentic or not. But if you want authentic results, data collection agencies are there who put forth this data on the web. Such is a thing which is called as data as a service. What do they provide you here? Data as a service. Again, pay per use basis, the amount of data you buy, and that is exactly why today data is called the new oil, because we have data analytics. You remember data analytics? ETL, the concept of extract, transform and load. So you extract data, transform them and load it back in the system so that it can be made available for sale, which is also part of this, and which is one of the reasons why this has so much importance also. Data provided on demand to a diverse set of users, systems or application. The data may include text, image, sound, video, whatever it could be. Then talk about security as a service. Like I told you some time back, VPN providers are there. Now, if I want my staff to use VPN, and I have to sit here and make sure that they connect to the VPN. Like how most of the people connect to VPN. They have a user ID. They'll go on to that user ID and they'll put in their password. Then it will take them to the VPN page, wherein the VPN service provider, if you are only maintaining the VPN, then it's fine. But otherwise, if you outsource it to a third party, which is what most people do, and the VPN service provider will send a pin in the sense an OTP kind of a thing to your mobile, and then you have to put this pin and then go on to the VPN. Now, let's say I am an organization called X Limited, and X Limited's employees are working from home. So they are connecting from their home network to the office servers. But I don't want them to work in the open on their home network. What if somebody hacks their home network? And somebody hacking their home network will give them root access to the company servers, which I don't want. So what will I ask my employees to do? Go home, connect to your network, no problem. After you connect to your network, and once they are trying to connect to the X Limited's network, X Limited will redirect them to a web page which is the web page maintained by a VPN service provider, virtual private network. That fellow will send you a OTP, you put in the OTP there, and then you now start working on their VPN platform. So this service is called as security as a service. These are again provided by vendors over the web. And then security as service is also very much connected to identity as service. Identity as service is nothing but checking whether the person who is connecting to the web is the right person who can connect there or not. That is called what? Identity as a service. Look at the last one. Security as service, an ability given to the end user to access security services provided by a provider on a pay-per-use basis. It is a new approach to security in cloud security. So where security is moved to the cloud itself. You don't, X Limited doesn't have to sit there and monitor which employee is connecting, which employee is not connecting. If this employee is connecting, he is my employee or not. Why should X Limited spend time on all this? There is an exclusive vendor who is doing only that as his job. No, let us outsource it to that particular person who is called the security service provider, who will maintain the VPN and all that. It's a new approach to security in which cloud security is moved to the cloud itself, and users will be protected from within the cloud using a unified approach to threats. 4 mechanisms of cloud security are email filtering. They can help you with email filtering, web content filtering, vulnerability management, and the example that I gave you is called identity management, to just make sure that only those identities or only those people who are allowed can connect to this service. Not only that, in fact, if you take into consideration the other two, web content filtering, what content is going on their web, the service provider will check and then only allow that content to be posted. Nothing, they are like, instead of you hiring security guards to stand outside your organization, you are hiring a security service provider on the cloud. And last one is called identity as a service. Is an ability given to the end users, which is typically an organization or an enterprise, to access the authentication infrastructure that is built, hosted, managed and provided by the third party service provider. So these are the cloud service models that we have in this particular chapter, and it's a very extensive concept that we discussed, which is called the cloud computing environment.